Alright, hello everybody, this is, it's been quite a while since I've done anything like this, but basically my plan for tonight is literally just to hop on LU and just sit down and have a chat about some stuff. There's not going to be a particular aim. I'm going to be in Forbidden Valley grinding out faction tokens. And I'm probably going to die. But yeah, don't expect any semblance of good gameplay from me. Because I'm going to try, like, normally what happens, right, is I get distracted by whatever it is I'm doing in the game, and then I end up getting confused as to what it was I was talking about, and end up just talking to myself. Honestly, I probably shouldn't be here. I should probably just go into a Vanguard and somewhere where I can fight literally without thinking whatsoever. Maybe Brick Rock. Not Brick Rock, actually. Maybe the place, the Maelstrom Ravine, something like that. That seems like a better idea than here, so I'll be able to actually think about other stuff if I'm there. So yeah, basically. Yeah, what is it I'm going to talk about? Well, firstly, it's kind of an explanation as to, I guess, a little bit as to why videos have been very, very, very erratic. Then I'd like to have a little bit of a chat about motivation. So I've discussed a little bit in the past some stuff related to stress and how it seems to almost correlate, like, having a job you care about and, like, getting stressed about it, because, you know, by definition, if you care about something sufficiently, given enough time, and something the ergodic hypothesis, it will generate stress for you. So I've discussed that in the past, and it's kind of going a little bit past that and actually asking the question, okay, why? Like, I previously was like, okay, how can I make physics less stressful? How can I, like, deal with this? How can I look at that? And then, kind of recently, there's been almost more the question for me, why physics? It's not in the sense of, like, maybe I don't want to do physics. Like, the answer as to why I'm interested in physics is, like, that's in it. It's an easy question to answer, and the sort of thing that anyone who's ever done an interview for anything physics related could go off on a tangent about for ages. But yeah, I think the answer's deeper than the obvious. And then there's the question, and then I've just got the word physics project written. Oh, okay, yes. So I made some short notes for myself on just what I like, the things I wanted to cover. Do I genuinely not have a hat? Okay. Well, it looks like I'll have something else to get whilst I'm there then, I guess. So the final thing on this list is physics project, because I thought it might be interesting for people to get an insight into, as someone who's been doing physics for absolutely ages, now, like, some of the misconceptions, and when I say absolutely ages, I mean as in, like, as a proportion of my life. Like, the current thing I have been working on, I'm what, 21? I've been working on it for, wait a second, so it's third year. I've got to do a little bit of maths here. Third year of university. Final year of sixth form is year 13, so this is roughly equivalent to year 16. Wow, that makes me feel old. That is, and what, it was end of GCSEs, more or less, I think. Yeah, I think that was almost exactly when it was. Okay, so we'll say, so end of GCSEs, that's end of year 11. So it's, yeah, okay, it's roughly on the order of 5 years I've spent doing this, which, that's like, I know that's not a long length of time by anyone who's, like, but like this is something I've absolutely poured my heart and soul into for a quarter of my life, more or less. And that's just kind of the current. That's not even physics in general. That's just like the current iteration of things I've been working on. So yeah, it would be interesting to discuss that and discuss motivations, but also I don't know, for a little bit like discussing the process involved, etc. Because I think a lot of that somewhat surprised me. Yeah, so to begin, why have I produced like absolutely no videos or anything like that recently? The answer here is fairly simple. It's the fact that, well, normally my video production goes throughout a pretty clear and fairly well-defined cycle. Normally what happens is I'll be at home, and when I'm at home, can't really make videos or get any semblance of like being able to record like any reasonable length of videos. Can't really do that because Wi-Fi will just disconnect. Well, no, I won't disconnect, but it just, like, me trying to upload a video absolutely crashes Wi-Fi for like an entire day. It's annoying. So yeah, that's the reason I never tend to do during term time. During time outside of term, then there's the question as to why I don't. And then on top of that, I also dislike recording whilst other people are around because I don't want to be annoying and disturb them. So yeah, I tend not to do videos and stuff like that then when people are around, and so it just tends to be a lot easier for me to make them whilst I'm at uni. The issue is that, of course, whilst I'm at uni, I'm also, well, at uni, and that takes up rather a lot of my time. So normally what will happen is that around the start of term, when I have some free time, I'll post videos. Around the end of term, when I also have some free time, I'll try and post videos. This has been a little bit weirder than it often sometimes is this term, because, yeah, I've had exams at different times when I normally would have had them and stuff like that. Or when I'm necessarily used to having them, I guess. It's not... Yeah. But, yeah, so that's the reason there's been erratic. So what actually happened is, during revision, I felt a lot more flexible for my time, and also, like, other people tended to be... Like, yeah, other people tended to not be around as much, and so I was like, okay, I'll do videos as like a break for revision, but yeah, that was only sustainable up to a point. Okay, I should actually, I've got to build this, don't I? Yeah. But yeah, so. And so basically, yeah, what's happened this term is I was like, nah, you know what? Every single term I do here, I feel like I get to the end of term and I'm just tired and I just relax. And I have tried to do the exact opposite of that this term. I've tried to be like, you know what? Let's just pick up an absolute ton of things to do. And let's just ensure that I make the most of the time I have hanging out with friends, etc. here. Which has been what the aim has been for me, and the reason why at the end of term I haven't been putting out as many videos. Because basically I've realised, yeah, I tend to procrastinate, and me procrastinating does tend to correlate fairly nicely with me having time to make videos. So... yeah, so with that said, a little bit on why there haven't been... why there was like a period where I was posting videos daily. I just was kind of interested in seeing what would happen if I did. The thing I find the funniest is that my subscriber count actually dropped during that, because those videos were... Well, I don't actually know necessarily why it dropped, because like I produced dumb stuff before. I guess people just felt like their feed was being spammed with it, which is fair. Like, I wouldn't say the quality was any lower, but yeah, that was quite funny, and I mean, I'm fine with that because this has always been like just a random thing I do for. I mean, okay, so I mean, this gets onto motivation, and no, I don't just do this for my own satisfaction. Like there is, and I think it's worth noting, there is an element of me that it's not like I'm doing this for the sake of producing the best videos I possibly can. I mean, anyone who's seen my content knows that's not the case. The only reason I do this is because early on with Ninja U, people were kind of interested in seeing other stuff, and I mean, especially very early on, people were watching my videos back at times when there wasn't much gameplay. People were watching my videos and just for that, and so it was like kind of a natural thing to do a channel that was basically entirely gameplay. But yeah, I definitely think when looking at this, there's definitely like this channel only ever existed for what was basically just a niche interest for some people, and one which is now far more easily scratched. So yeah, is there any actual purpose of this anymore? Not really, which I think also does somewhat damage motivation. There's obviously like the far more standard desire, which is like, oh yes, want to be well, there's definitely the thing which plays a part in it, which I'm sure plays a part in most people setting up YouTube channels, which is, hey, want to do something that lots of people get enjoyment out of. And why is that? No one ever is doing that for like truly altruistic reasons. Like there's a large amount of self-gratification, which is like, yeah, we're like, yeah, hey, I'm doing something that has value. And I think, and so yeah, that's a huge thing I want to talk about today, which is motivation and what has value. That was arguably, that may not seem like a smooth segue, but that was far smoother one than I actually intended. It was kind of accidental, but kind of proves my point about this being a, like, for me at least, a fairly useful and fundamental topic. So yeah, motivation. That's a word that's bandied around a lot. And I know there's a video that keeps cropping up on my YouTube feed, which I haven't watched yet, which is why grading doesn't work and motivation is a myth, which, like, that sounds like good vibes. And there's some stuff I have mentioned in the past about, like, my personal theories on motivation, how it's kind of related to, I would, like, often, like, misrepresented, like, you either are motivated to do physics or you aren't, and, like, in my perspective, in my experience, it tends to be far less binary. It tends to be like, oh, you're motivated to work in a certain way, perhaps, or stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, that brings me back to like motivation physics, and motivation for this channel, stuff like that. Like, what is it that actually drove me to do this? Because, like, I have dedicated a lot of my life to something which there's no, like, and I mean, we all will, like, we all will dedicate huge portions of our lives to jobs. And so the question is, yeah, what is it that determines your motivation? And for me, a large part of that, for me, there are like particular things that that's been related to. Like, from a kid, me doing physics, one of the reasons I got encouraged about it as a kid was like, well, one of the things I was encouraged with is like, oh yeah, you can use this to like really make the world a better place. You can, like, that's a good reason of doing science. Science is, I mean, one way I would one way I would almost define physics is the aim is exploitative understanding. It is trying to understand the world to the extent that we can exploit that understanding for gain. And yeah, often gain is somewhat ill-defined. But yeah, that's how I would tend to. Yeah, that's how I. No, this is where it's happened. This is where it's happened. We knew it was going to happen, and this is the first Ninja losing track of his train of thought bit. But yeah, oh yeah, so it was. Yeah, like that's where it always came from with physics. It was like, you know what, like basically since a kid, it was like, yeah, I want to. And this is largely influenced by my parents. It was like, yeah, I'm fairly good at this, and hey, people in the past have used this thing to help make the world a better place some of the time. Why can't I try and do the same? If I'm fairly good at it, might as well give that a go. And like that's been the motivation for absolutely ages. Like there are obviously a couple of other motivations. One of them arguably there's a non-negligible like extent to which like I'm sure my enjoyment of physics is actually related to a similar to similar processes such as gambling addictions, because there are definitely links between science and gambling. Like I mean, a major reason people work in large research groups is to someone else there is to effectively just spread the probability. Because if there are more of you in a group, you're more likely to discover something. So, like, genuinely, there's an element of that, because when I'm working on a problem, I am not necessarily enjoying every moment of it, but, you know, there will be those moments that I really do enjoy, where I make like a clever breakthrough, and that feels really good. Although, again, I guess there's a certain element of, okay, why do I enjoy making those breakthroughs? What is it about making what I deem is a clever breakthrough which, like, really excites me? I guess that's still bugged. Like, what is it about coming up with a clever solution to a problem which excites me? And, like, there are probably a couple of answers to that question, or a couple of competing factors. But, like, one of them very definitely is, like, you know what, as a kid, that was what the school system taught me was, like, a thing I could do of value. I don't know. What it feels like to me, this may well just be personal experience, but what it kind of feels like in general to me is that I've, over the past the past year mainly, I've been really realising how much, like, my implicit, like, random biases from childhood have actually, like, genuinely largely shaped decisions I've made. Which I found really interesting to think about. How many do we need? We need 9 in total. Hello there. I'm being danced on. Whoa, that moves? I have literally never seen that move. Huh. Wow. The more you know. Okay, let's... Oh no, I don't need to break them out yet. Don't remember if I do or not. But yeah. Okay, no, I don't. But yeah, so motivation. Yeah. That was one of the huge things for me, but for me, that was... I've realised kind of recently how dumb that fundamental motivation is, or rather, the extreme to which I took it over, like, the past few years has been, like, I think that's the best way of phrasing it. Like, Motivation is to make the world a better place. The issue is that if I didn't do something which concretely made the world a better place, that was like, no. You failed in some sense. Yeah, basically. So I've never really been satisfied with the idea of making just incremental progress, and that has had its pros and cons. Like, I mean, it's meant that work I do tends to be more general, and it means that when it succeeds, like, it tends to be more widely applicable, more interesting, but at the same time, like, it also means that I bite off a lot more than I can chew. But the thing is, it's not just that I bite off a lot more than I can chew, it's that actually, by biting off a lot more than I can chew, like, I think basically this is the maybe actual answer to the question about, okay, how do you manage stress if stress is like a fundamental part of what you do, or the idea that if you do something you love, you're doing something you care about, then you necessarily are going to get stressed over time because of the fact you do care about it. I think for me, the thing which I've been probing more and more recently is, okay, why do I care about this? What is it that I actually personally am getting out of this? Like, where do I derive the value? Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, what good am I getting out of this? Like, I discover a cure for cancer. Well, great, I don't currently have cancer. It's not like I'm saying, oh, well, that was useless because I didn't get anything out of it. It's more the case of, you know, what is it that is giving me satisfaction? If I discovered a cure for cancer, probably would get a fair amount of satisfaction out of that because, well, why would I? Is a really good question to ask. Like, it's easy to say, oh, just because it would help a ton of people, but, like, I don't know if that would be, like, it sounds really awful to say, but, like, your mind abstracts things away. I don't know if I genuinely could be motivated by saving lives of cancer patients. Like, that sounds like a really awful thing to say, but, like, I think you need an extra step. I don't think the human mind, because cancer is a huge problem, but if, like, a lot of motivation tends to come from, like, evolutionary reasons, and evolutionary things tend to be stuff like family, like protecting those we love. And if no one I love currently has cancer, then I am naturally going to be less motivated to solve it. Like, you need the extra step. Alright, I opened models. And, like, that's not a good thing, but, like, I would, like, there's, for me, the extra step of, okay, I get satisfaction in some sense out of helping society, and that comes from a separate step. So the reason why I would be quite pleased if I did discover the cure to cancer, right, I'm a physicist, it's not going to happen, but the reason I would be quite pleased is because I've helped society. But why am I pleased that I've helped society? There's no evolutionary reason there's no direct evolutionary reason I should do. Like, obviously, evolution has been trying to build in societal stuff for quite a while, but, like, there's no reason it's as strong as helping family, and it's kind of the fact that, you know what, we tend to, after a little while, after a certain age, we tend to associate, like, helping society with, almost conflate it with, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make the same mistake directly twice in a row. Like, because you're told so often by family to, like, look out for people, etc. And so you see that as a way you can help family, and then, like, just in general, being told to, you know, be a good person, like, try and not leave the world in the worst place you found it, tends to lead you towards, like, there are very selfish reasons, if we want to go from an evolutionary perspective, for people to say that. I mean, I guess there aren't, actually. There are selfish reasons for people saying, help me and no one else. But, I mean, there's a perfectly good argument for this in the original sense of a meme, which is an idea just... the evolution, like evolution, but for ideas. The idea that ideas can spread generationally. And I think there's a very good argument to be made that society definitely does achieve this. But yeah, so for me there's a question about... Well, you should definitely not have spawned, but I'm not going to complain. That's interesting. It's like the quick build despawned, and because the quick build despawned, it I'll drop that. But yeah, so that's something that is kind of like, because if you're not directly... Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like, if I'm not... Like, I find it harder to... Well, I guess it's kind of by definition, but I find it harder to motivate myself to do stuff that I don't care about, which, like, that really just passes the buck, like, completely. Like, there's not actually any useful information whatsoever contained within that sentence. Like, that's almost a definition of motivation. But, like, I think a big thing for me has been investigating why do I care about stuff like physics, and... Yeah, a surprise... Well, I've learned a lot of use score. I haven't even been really farming for that. But yeah, so that, I don't know. So that's kind of... My real question for the moment is, can I relearn motivation? Or how easily can I shift the direction in which I am motivated? Because I know I cannot... Like, well, okay, I can. But I as a person... I do not have the strength of character to dedicate my life to finding a breakthrough that will genuinely change the world. And it will genuinely, like, make people's lives better on the span of my lifetime. Like, I was going to say I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not a good enough physicist. I don't think that's true, not because I think I'm a really good physicist, but because, like, I'm like... People definitely work incredibly hard for discoveries in physics, but also so much of it is, like, well, so much of it is down to hard work, so much is down to luck. Like, a lot of the time, like, natural talent does come into it significantly less. Heck, Nobel Prizes are often given out, like, people have gotten Nobel Prizes on, like, the basis of politics within the Nobel Committee. I mean, it's kind of, it makes sense, but, like, that's the hugest thing for success in physics by, like, many standards, and people, like, notable examples have been significantly affected by politics within the committee. So, for instance, I've heard, and I guess I don't know I cannot confirm this to be 100% fact. This was relayed to me as a story. I guess I didn't carefully check. I'm not 100% certain where I would. But I heard the story of Brian Josephson, who got a Nobel Prize for the Josephson junction. Part of why he got the prize was because basically the Josephson junction is a superconducting junction which demonstrates some really cool resonance effects and has very interesting behaviour directly related to transmission lines and Fabry-Pro cavities, stuff you'd be used to seeing if you spent time in optics. And one of the nice things about it is it lets you work out a value for E over H bar, or E over H, which is the electric charge divided by Planck's constant, and that's like having a good measurement of that is like fundamentally related to how we define units in physics. And we define a large number of, well, not a large number. That helps us narrow down our definition of, depending on how you look at it, like either the coulomb or the kilogram, they kind of all fit together. I think like more typically it would be defined as linking to the coulomb. Or I guess if we're talking SI units, the amp. So yeah, really incredible discovery, and has lots of interesting ramifications, which means it's used to this day. But one of the large things in the Nobel Prize was apparently the fact that superconductivity was a big discovery, and someone who had got the Nobel Prize for superconductivity knew of another big name in the field, and they were like, no, you know, this guy really deserves it. Unfortunately, this guy, because, you know, it's gender distribution of STEM subjects. It's like, yeah, this guy deserves credit for this. And but it was superconductivity, which was something they'd worked on, and like it was, I think they may have even like been someone in their lab. It was something like that, and basically they were like, I cannot directly nominate this person, and so what they did was they nominated someone else who worked on superconductivity for the sake of kind of getting a. They nominated Josephson for superconductivity, with the idea that, okay, if they give it to Josephson, they also need to credit the discovery of superconductivity, or like the theory behind it, I don't know exactly what it was, and that means they'll also credit this person, and this person will also get the prize they deserve. And like a Nobel Prize, again, I don't know the precise details, but a Nobel Prize was definitely earned in relation to this, and it's like that's. Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, the whole concept of Nobel Prizes and stuff like that is, like, the Nobel Prize has gone to people for, like, some dubious stuff in the past, and there are definitely examples of people getting the Nobel Prize and then using that to further pseudosciences, or even just to give themselves a platform, whether it's pseudoscience or otherwise. So, classic example being Pauli and vitamin C, which he argued was, I think it was vitamin C at any rate, which he argued was a cure for just about everything, up to and including cancer. And this has, to the best of my knowledge, as of to like most recent studies on this area, it's never been shown to be the case with any significance whatsoever. And it's a similar thing also with Pauli, actually, because he was like a 2-time Nobel Prize winner, if I'm recalling correctly. He also made the big. He also like absolutely destroyed. I want to say Dan. That might be wrong. But Schechtman's career in crystallography, like he like completely destroyed the guy's career in crystallography, claiming that this thing he proposed, quasi-crystals, couldn't possibly be true. Like backlash from this got Schechtman literally kicked out of the research group he was working in, and was later shown to actually be entirely correct and won him the Nobel Prize. I think anyway. I think he won a Nobel Prize, Schechtman. I could be misremembering, but it's something like that. Point is, it's Nobel Prize, I guess. Point is, I have digressed, and Nobel Prizes are weird, and don't trust them. Don't trust them to be a gold standard for, like, hey, someone did something valuable for the world. Well, I mean, that does, like, then directly come back to what I was talking about, which is, okay, how... Yeah, what is it that I do use? Like, I can list issues with most ways of determining my success in the world, or like my success as a person in the world, but I can rule things out very easily, but it's a lot harder to rule in and say, oh, you know what, this is a good way of judging that I've done something good with my life. Or no, that's a bad way of phrasing it. That's the instinctive way of phrasing it, but that's not really. That can't really motivate you on a day-to-day basis, or at least it can't motivate me. The notion of having done something good with my life, like, and when I do like try and use that as motivation, that just then leads me to be like, well, this thing I'm working on with metamaterials, this has to be like an orders of magnitude improvement, because like otherwise no one will ever adopt this thing I've been working on, and if no one adopts it, like it will never improve the world. It's like, I don't know, I felt personally like I can't work on anything which holds the potential for incremental stuff. Like if I'm doing something, it has to come with the possibility of a breakthrough, and that's that's not been great, because there's, I mean, for me, a huge thing has been the sunk cost fallacy. Like, so I guess this kind of gets on to mean physics, but yeah, I've been if you ask my friends what I like work on, they'll probably give you the answer optics. Or like what it is that I'm good at, what is my speciality is in physics, they'd probably answer optics. And the reason for this is because what I've been doing, optics, I've been doing research in the area for ages. Specifically, I've been doing research in the area of optical metamaterials. And to give a brief summary of the field, the idea is basically that if I make structures with which light can interact, but which are smaller than the wavelength of light, the light won't diffract off of them. So you won't be able to tell that there are structures beneath the wavelength of light, or just like beneath half the wavelength of light, something like that. You won't be able to visually see any structures beneath this cutoff. However, they'll still be there. And you can use that to basically, effectively, the idea is you build your own atoms. You work out, okay, what would I want in an atom? How would an atom have to resonate to give me the properties I desire? And then you sit down and literally design your own meta-atoms, maybe made out of wires or something, to operate on a nanoscale to achieve that. And the classic example being a microwave oven door, which appears to microwaves, which appears to visible light, as though it's got tons of holes in it, but to microwaves it appears perfectly smooth, and that's why microwaves don't get out, and how you're able to generate such large intensities in microwaves in such a small area. Yeah, and so that's the basics behind metamaterials, and I stumbled across them, the year after, right after finishing my GCSEs, and spent ages like looking into the topic, and I have looked down so many dead ends. Like I misunderstood that field many times over. So I misunderstood physics honestly many times over in this process. And so like one of the huge things very early on was noting that one thing we didn't have was a single formula which determined the behavior of an arbitrarily shaped piece of metal, I guess, on the nanoscale. We didn't have anything. There's nothing to handle that, or at least there's no closed form expansion. There was nothing that looked like what I was looking for to handle that. And so I spent basically about probably about a year on that, and I remember at one point, at one point, like, actually it must have been over a year and a bit, and I remember at one point being like utterly distraught, going over to my girlfriend at the time, and just being like, I've wasted a year, because what I basically realised is that all of this stuff I was doing required certain notions of, I'd come up with something which seemed reasonably useful at the time and like a good idea, of a like current and charge distribution function. So rather than like just having a charge distribution, this was like charge distribution per unit charge. So as I add more and more charge to a region, that's well positioned. No, come on, you're kidding me. But yeah, so it would the idea being that, yeah, basically it's as I keep adding more and more charge, if we assume that the charge previously added doesn't affect the distribution of the new charge added, then and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, let's work out the capacitance in terms of that function, because that seems like a pretty reasonable idea. And honestly, that is a fairly reasonable idea. Like, looking back now, sure, yeah, that could work. If you knew this distribution function, that would work for any linear device. And like, normally we assume capacitors work fairly linearly. So I was like, yeah, okay, good idea. But the issue with this is that like, getting that distribution function is by far the hardest part. Like, if you do that, if you've got that function, like, yes, this formalism I was looking at could help you, but like, honestly, you're basically already done by that stage. And so it was like, I spent a lot of time trying to work out how you could generate those, and there was no really nice way that I ended up coming up with. And what I realised by the end was that, you know what, the only way of doing that properly is like a full Maxwell's equation simulation, which was exactly what I was trying to avoid the whole time. And so the reason why I say I kind of fundamentally misunderstood physics in this instance was because I thought that the whole challenge was just that, you know, we had all the ideas there, and we just needed a better formula, a less approximate formula, in order to make the next big breakthrough in metamaterials. And that just is not the case. And that's, interestingly, like, very rarely is it the case that all we're holding out for is just a less approximate formula. Sometimes this is the case, but generally, no, it's not. And the reason is that, like, normally the exact behavior doesn't deviate that strongly from the approximate behavior. There's normally not that much of a difference, and so when that's almost by definition the approximate behavior. But yeah, as long as you've chosen your approximation somewhat sensibly, like, you should expect some different behavior, but it's normally quantitative, not qualitative. And we really, like, metamaterials were not in the position. I understood why I was doing it. I was doing it for the thought that, oh, maybe if I do write out a formula, I will notice something in the formula. And, like, I don't know, the capacitance goes to infinity or something if I do just this perfect arrangement. That seems dumb to me now, but I guess it wasn't at the time. But, yeah, eventually I realized that wasn't the case, and was not happy about it, because I genuinely felt like I'd wasted absolutely ages. And part of the reason I felt like I'd wasted ages was because I'd built up, like, a ton of intuition and a ton of understanding for this area, but, like, I'd not actually done anything that could help anyone. I'd not done anything that I could use to build something that would make the world in some sense a better place. Because, like, it was a bit meh. Like, okay, good work, but also, like, at the time everyone was pointing out, oh yeah, you've learned so much doing that. It's like, yeah, but I haven't actually done anything. And, like, it was true. I in both things. I hadn't done anything of any interest, but I had learnt a lot at the same time. But there's the rub. And this is what I have a lot of difficulty with to this day, which is the fact that that's bad. But yeah, it's the fact that the thing I've done cannot have changed, and my feelings about it can do a complete U-turn. Like I went from being really proud of all my work to realizing it was useless, and that devalued it for me, which I think is like. That's why I draw the link between physics and gambling, because certainly if you treat physics the way I had been, and arguably still have been, it is fundamentally a gamble. There is no way of knowing in advance whether or not your piece of work will necessarily make a difference to the world. There are definitely some heuristics you can use, but there's no way of predicting that in advance. And so so that's kind of why I'm interested in talking about motivation with everyone, because for me it's a really difficult thing. Like, what is it that drives me to do physics? Like at the moment, so like where is this all at now? Because I've obviously identified some of this. Does this mean I change things and improve things for the better? And the answer is not really. I'm still. The answer is I don't know. Like, I'm aware of this now. I'm aware that this is a problem and this is something I do need to work on. And I think that's good. And I'm hoping that, like, that I can choose to go into fields where, well, basically, for me, a large part of this is like, you know what, this would work for me if I were in. This part of the issue is that I've always been trying, like, the stuff I've been working on has always been like, okay, I want to build something. I want to design something that someone could use to make the world a better place. And the issue with that is if I'm doing something that, like, is incredibly directly practical, then I can be like, then it's very clear how that will happen. And it's like, if I get a null result, it's like, okay, no, definitely nothing that interesting or useful is coming of this. And so I think for me, one of the things I've got to try and do, one of the things I have been trying to do, is I've been trying to approach problems with more generality. That is just like, okay, I want to understand this topic better. It's not, I want to build this, because that's a lot easier to fail than I just want to, look into something and effectively try and understand it better than anyone else. That's honestly, it's a huge challenge, but it's not as hard a challenge as it would seem. Because all you need to do to achieve that is just to go into a narrower and narrower area. And, like, for me, I've still got the underlying issue with, like, I want to be able to make the world a better place, and that is unrealistic. It's unfeasible. But the nice thing is that I can change where it is. There are some things I trust that, given time, if I make progress there, that I can improve the world, or that it will indirectly have improved the world. There are other places where I don't trust that's the case, and that's like that's I think one of the things I've discovered about myself is that that, like, for instance, if I'm doing physics in an energy regime which is accessible in day-to-day life, and I understand something better than anyone else ever has, then I see that as a win. Like, that's something that I had to kind of relearn. Because, I mean, I've mentioned this in the past, but, and also kind of alluded to it, in physics, like, I mentioned there are ways of, like, seeing in advance whether or not you're likely to get something out of somewhere, and often a great, or, like, predicting what you could get out from investigating a particular area. And one thing that one of the easiest things you can do on that front is basically just dimensional analysis. You can just look at the scales that the particular phenomena you're working with involve, and you can see, okay, well, realistically, things aren't likely to deviate too much from those scales. The thing I'm actually working on at the moment is, in a special case, basically seeing, okay, how much deviation can I actually possibly get from those scales, but that's a slightly long story to get there. But yeah, and so one thing which I only realised recently is, or which I didn't realise in full until recently, I guess, is how little stuff that I would have regarded. So it's a little bit of a meme in our friendship group that, like, you know how everyone, well, I don't know. I remember at school, a lot of the people who were going into, like, physics and maths were really interested in those areas would fairly heavily meme the engineers for, like, haha, pi equals 3. I have done unspeakable things by those standards. By the standards we used to meme NGs for pi equals 3. Oh my, I have committed abominations. But it was... But yeah, the kind of equivalent meme at university has become particle physics, and it's for a very different reason. For engineering, it was just like, they're too focused on the end goal. And actually, the really ironic part and the incredibly hypocritical part is that at uni, it's actually completely changed the other direction for me, and that now the reason I slightly meme particle physics is almost for the fact that it's not applied enough, and like it's not directly like the reason we tend to meme particle physics is just for the fact that out of everything that's been done at the moment, we don't really have, like, a lot of time and effort has been spent on particle physics, and in particular we meme particle physics less than like particular implementations of it. So for instance, string theory has become a little bit of a joke in our friendship group, largely because, well, it is related to this notion of like how applied something is. In particular, I don't expect we'll ever be able to get that much out of string theory, and the reason is that string theory mostly, I mean, it has to mostly predicts exactly the same universe we see around us. Like, that's kind of that's how we measure. Like, that's the first test we ask of a theory is, okay, can it reproduce the theories that came before? And if it can't, then, like, that's a good reason to drop it. A lot of the time, it's not always a good reason to drop it. I mean, quantum mechanics, for instance, doesn't fit with general relativity. We don't drop either of those, and the reason for that is that they work on basically different scales of the universe, and therefore both can still apply, just not simultaneously. But yeah, and one of the things is with string theory is it reproduces our universe basically perfectly. But like, yeah, you can in theory get Like, so what you don't want is, I can write down, right now for you, I could write down more or less a general theory of physics as we understand it. The issue is that that theory would basically force you to measure an infinite number of things when we can't. And what's worst of all, most of that infinite number of things would require like huge particle accelerators larger than anything we could ever build. And so yeah, there's a huge thing, and this is one of the major criticisms leveled at string theory is testability. And that's inherently related to the energy scales at which it operates. We only see deviations from normal physics at very high energy scales. And therefore, if we can never reach those energy scales, like, for me, it's a lot harder to motivate myself to work in that particular area, because, like, what good can I do? Like, there's nothing I can do which will improve the life of anyone who doesn't have access to CERN on the weekends. Missed. Might be fine. Dang it. The body blocking me from hitting the crate. Honestly, good strategy by the Admirals. I respect it. But yeah, I really just want to introduce, to just discuss this notion of motivation and like trying to work out where your motivation inherently comes from. Because for me, understanding exactly what it is I'm interested in, or understanding where my motivation comes from, like, really helps to, like, say, okay, where might I want to go? Well, I don't really want to go into particle physics, because I don't feel I can help anyone with that. However, one of the things I really, like, I do genuinely enjoy the process of doing physics. Now, there's a little bit of a question, okay, why do you? And I mean, the answer to that is non-trivial. Like, I could give you the standard answers. Like, I would give her an interview, which is like, oh yes, physics is really, really cool because it's, yeah, I don't know. It's the reason I originally got into physics was like the fact that it suddenly hit me how cool it was that, like, literally physics is there to try and let you predict the future. And I was like, wow, that's like a real life superpower, basically. Then realised just how hard it is to actually solve things accurately enough in day-to-day situations that it would appear like a superpower, but and then implement them accurately enough because they're chaos and thermodynamics. Sorry about that. I was thinking and then stopped thinking as I began sneezing. But like, and yeah, that does genuinely really interest me. And my issue was that, like, wait a second, I realised we have all the equations governing day-to-day life. Does that not mean that we're like, if we have all the equations governing day-to-day life, governing the energy scales in day-to-day life, doesn't that mean that physics is more or less done? Like, is the only place I can go to do new physics particle physics, somewhere where I'm basically certain I won't be able to directly help the world? And I say directly help the world. Like, the classic thing, which is honestly one of the weakest arguments I've ever heard from CERN as to why they should keep getting funding, is basically, oh, we invented the internet. and stuff like that. It's the argument that CERN have done some incredible things, and I will not fault them on that front for a second. CERN astound me. It's like genuinely a monument to humanity that that all of that exists. Like, it's incredible. Like, I went there what, two summers ago. Yeah, might be 3 now. Wow. And like some of the stats, like, they know the exact position of everything in CERN to like within a centimeter, I think it was, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize the amount of stuff there is at CERN, and like how, yeah, the fact that you're talking on the order of kilometers, and that was like they know everything in CERN to within that precision. That's like down to the least important stuff. Imagine how well they know the precision of like the more important things, like detectors, I guess. And so, like, I am incredibly astounded by the work of like the work that went into making CERN what it is. But I do have I disagree with the argument that, oh, we got some good stuff out of it, therefore we should do it again. Like, nuclear power plants are great. Do I think we should do World War, II again? Not as huge a fan of that as an idea. Like, war has been, like, it's, necessity is the mother of invention. War has generated huge funding in the sciences, huge progress in sciences multiple times over. Do I think that's a good argument for war? Not necessarily. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that CERN is as damaging to the world as war. Like, I think CERN is overall a pretty good thing, but I do find that a very dubious argument that good stuff happened as a side effect of this, therefore you should put more money into this. Because it's like, okay, but good stuff, basically this is just a pet round on how bad an argument that is, because like, that's an argument that we should be putting lots of money into some technical things. There's no reason that should, for instance, necessarily be CERN. There's no reason it shouldn't, for instance, be stuff like fusion projects in France, say. I think it's in France. The big European fusion project. I forget what it's called. But yeah, so that's. But I was genuinely left like with a fairly large dilemma on my hands, which was like, wait a second, how on earth do I do physics? Because at that point it was like, well, particle physics is the only thing I would really count as actual like physics. Like, it's the only thing where we have a bunch of people sitting down trying to understand the universe better, and for various reasons it didn't feel to me hugely likely that we'd get a breakthrough. Like, as I say, even CERN kind of admits this in the fact that they're like, why should we be putting money into this? It's because we invented the internet. It's not because our discovery is it's because our discovery might change the way we view the universe. It's not because they like very rarely try and argue that that the discoveries will, in and of themselves, like directly give us anything that will actually improve life on Earth. Arguably, similar things for similar things for lots of areas like cosmology, etc. And I mean, there's kind of a good reason for that in like how the subject's evolved. Like, okay, I've definitely gone the speed boost glitch, so I'm just gonna relog. But yeah, like, I mean, if there is an advantage to be gained from something directly, obviously more effort is going to be put into that sooner rather than later. I mean, even just by evolution itself, like, we get brilliant exploitation of lots of things. But yeah, so for me, what ended up happening is like, wow, I've kind of ruled out a lot of fields where like they have to. Well, I ruled out basically everything for one reason or another, it was kind of like, wait a second, is there no way I can actually do something which gives me the same level of enjoyment of, like, actually realizing, no, what, I understand this now. I understand this thing which I didn't understand before. Maybe no one had understood before. Now I really understand this. Because it genuinely felt like everything was cut off. And, like, the answer ends up being, well, the answer ended up being, for me, largely stuff like condensed matter. And I mean, there's definitely, yeah, there are biases as to why I might have gone into that. But I might be interested in that. But yeah, one thing that's been something which kind of, I was having a discussion with friends and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with physics, because, like, it feels like a lot of the stuff that I want to do has already been cut off. And I mean, I guess if there's a takeaway from this, it's when deciding what you want to do, analyze your motivations really carefully. Because anything you choose to do with your life, you will spend a lot of time in your life doing. And if you're anything like me, you've real difficulty, like, working on, like, I cannot motivate myself, as I've discussed in the past in this very well, to, like, revise for exams, just because I have zero motivation from it. It's not a way of doing physics which in any way interests me. It's just like, sit down, do a question that someone else has already done, which is designed to be easy enough that I can do it in a short period of time. There's the rare occasion when it will actually be, like, a clever question, which will get me to think about, like, the underlying physics of the universe, and that'll be really cool. I'll enjoy that. But that tends to not be most questions. But yeah, so I just wanted to, like, throw this out that, yeah, because it can be really easy to say, I am motivated to study physics because physics lets me tell the future. And that is not a motivation that, well, again, if your brain's anything like mine, that's not a motivation that actually makes sense. That's certainly not something that could drive me to spend years of my life working on physics. What actually drove me to, and it was very easy to say, I want to be a physicist, without really thinking through what that meant. And I got quite lucky that there actually kind of is an area where I can do stuff that fits well with what actually fundamentally motivates me, which is, yeah, the thrill of problem solving, which in turn comes from, like, I suspect, if we, like, want to link it back to an evolutionary level, comes back from the fact that, hey, I feel like I am That's cyclic. I was going to say I feel like I'm contributing in some measurable way. Honestly, if you want a good reason for it, it's probably the fact that as a kid I was better at it than I was at a lot of other things, and was comparatively better at it than a lot of other people were, and therefore my mind was like, oh yes, you're good at this, you should do more of this. Okay, we do have enough for rank 2 faction gear. I mean, we already had enough levels for it. I don't know if we ever got it on this account. Seems like no. Might as well. Let's see what we already have there. Yeah, I guess I'm doing this because I could have been backed into a corner here, not understanding what the modern landscape, like, I mean, I'm sure I don't fully understand it still, But like, there's a lot I did not understand about the modern landscape of physics. And there's a lot of stuff that I discovered I didn't enjoy as much as I thought I would. Such as, actually, this thing that I started off working on, metamaterials. Well, I didn't really know where the field was. Turns out the field of metamaterials actually has like one underlying flaw, which is related to this control looks cooler. Yeah, it turns out the field of metamaterials has one, I say flaw, it has one limitation, one really huge limitation, which is this notion of scales and the fact that you need light to be on the scale of your of whatever you need. In order for light to interact with a nanostructure, it has to be on the scale of the nanostructure, but at the same time, in order for it not to diffract, the nanostructures have to be beneath the scale of the wavelength of light. The way this ends up happening normally is you have materials where, say for instance, the easiest example is water, where the wavelength of light inside the medium is different from the wavelength of light outside the medium, and therefore, once you're inside, light can fit very nicely, and when you're outside, light doesn't fit. Or it seems like it wouldn't fit. So yeah, when you're looking from the outside, it seems too small. When you're inside, it seems large enough. The issue is this requires a refractive index. The refractive indices are normally bounded, and therefore you can't make as much detail and have as much control as I initially assumed you could. Turns out there seems not to be a great way of getting around some of these limitations. They do seem to be quite fundamental. That's what I'm actually working on now. And that's the area of physics I'll be looking into over this summer. And I've got to be careful with this, because I'm hoping this underlines my whole time with metamaterials and kind of puts an end to it. That's the real aim. Because I've spent so much time working on metamaterials and it's kind of the reason, arguably the reason I still, even now, even knowing all of this, the reason I still keep putting time and energy into it is still the sunk cost fallacy. It's not necessarily, and that's not a great place to source your motivation from, because that's such a good way of getting burnt out, which, yeah, is a huge issue in physics. And presumably in other places, but I can't really comment on the other places as well as I can comment on physics. Anyway, I guess we should get some stuff here, given I'm just standing around looking at this. We've got enough faction tokens for quite a bit. I mean, probably the entire summoner kit. See if we have enough here. But we already do. That's nice. There we are. Oh wow, are you going to tell me I can go to Forbidden Valley now? Is it that I just got the message? I bet that's a message telling me I can go to Forbidden Valley. Yeah, there we are. Wow. I sure hope I haven't already been to Forbidden Valley by accident. No, I don't have enough XP for rank 3, so Crux Prime it is, I guess. I also want the big one. Don't have that yet on here. Yeah, I'm really interested in hearing people's opinions on this, because well, one of the things I love in this community, there was a really fun moment a while back. I was on a Nuchu community Discord server, I think it was, and I'd been mucking around with some people on the monument, and was and people were like, how are you doing what you're managing to do? Like, it seems like you're flying. I was just parkouring off of every surface available. But I was like, okay, I'll show you. Just come into VC. And they were like, yeah, sure. And so I sat in VC. No one ever turned up. Big rip. But that was kind of felt interesting and fortuitous in the end. Ended up meeting someone who I'd never have met before. It was genuinely really, really cool talking to him, because like he was I think, if I recall correctly, a graphic designer. I mean, this is ages ago we had this conversation now. If I recall correctly, he was like a graphics designer, and he'd done like, in many ways it would seem the exact opposite of me, but in many ways kind of the same thing. He'd very much gone down the entrepreneur route rather than the academia route, and had dropped out of college really early on to like decide he was going to work on this, and has been hugely successful at it. I was making lots. I was making now lots of money from it, and but yeah, huge success in some sense. But it was really, I just loved the, like, you know what? That's one of the coolest parts of online communities like LU, is the fact that you will just meet people who have done completely different things to what you would ever have dreamed of doing, and you will get interesting perspectives. I know previous times when I've made videos like this, I've gotten some really interesting perspectives from various people who are just like, which just disagreeing with stuff I'd said, and it was like that, which forced me to reconsider stuff and like actually look at things in a different way. For instance, the slight ergodic hypothesis joke I made near the start of this video about going for some pink, I guess. We're always looking for some pink. 5 dragons. Why did I accept that mission? Yeah, right at the start, I made a joke based around, I was discussing. I don't like this. Whoa! That's interesting. That I got knocked off of. I got knocked by the shot at the strongman. Yeah, I made that got a hypothesis early on in reference to the fact that, well, at the time I was having a discussion. I just made a video basically about this whole link between, which I was kind of finding, and which I just had a discussion with a supervisor about the whole, if you do something, would you really care about it? Will stress you out, because, like, by sheer dint of you caring about it, you are invested in your own performance in it, and, like, regardless of stresses applied by the job, you will apply stress to yourself. And so, like, just as a result of that, naturally, you will end up more stressed out if you're doing anything you care about, which is arguably, like, quite scary, potentially quite depressing. Like, great, there's nothing you can do. Arguably, I was there for quite a while, until recently when I started having these thoughts about, okay, what is it that actually, can I link what I do to my motivation in a healthier way, such that I can get fulfillment, such that I ensure that what I'm doing is something where my goals are realistic enough that they won't stress me out in the same way, where I can succeed on a day-to-day basis. I'm not convinced that's actually possible, and the reason I'm not convinced that's possible is because we get complacent as humans. Yeah, looks like we're doing this damageless. it's just judging by the amount of health I have at the moment. Well, it won't be damageless. Yes, I'm sure. I don't know. I'm very interested. Dang it. I'm very interested in hearing people's thoughts and stuff like this because I know everyone's experiences differ so greatly from mine, and it's really interesting. I like hearing people's different opinions. I don't know. This video has become, I mean, who would have expected? It's become incredibly rambly, but I really hope this might have been helpful to at least something. Like, I made this video hoping that that I could help someone out with this. That this might lead someone to make a better decision about what it is they want to do, a more informed decision about what might go on down the line. But at this stage, I am very much definitely rambling, so I will end it here. I'll maybe try and be more coherent. Wow. It's also a very, very, very hot day today, and I'm dying. By very, very hot day, for most people's standards, not a very, very hot day. For my standards, as someone who wears t-shirts and shorts, like, almost irrespective of what the weather is, I am dying. But, yeah, hopefully some of this has been of some use to someone. Because that was my motivation in making this. Thank you very much for watching. I've been doing stupid things since Instinct says around 2016. Citation may be partially needed, but arguably the citation's only needed for, if I'm trying to argue, I've only been doing stupid stuff since 2016. Hey, wait a second. This piece is already played on this playlist. Didn't realise this one did just loop stuff. Okay. Anyway, I guess what I should do for my evening before I go to sleep tonight is go back on YouTube and continue trying to work out if I can whistle, if it's at all possible for me to even whistle the melody line of Rushy, which is how I spent more time than I would like to admit last night. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Intro You. I'll see you around. Bye.